Who were the Aztecs? The Aztecs, who probably originated as a nomadic tribe in northern Mexico, arrived in Mesoamerica around the beginning of the 13th century. From their magnificent capital city, Tenochtitlan, the Aztecs emerged as the dominant force of central Mexico, developing an intricate social, political, religious, and commercial organization that brought many of the region's city-states under their control by the 15th century. Invaders led by the Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortes overthrew the Aztec Empire by force and captured Tenochtitlan in 1521, bringing an end to Mesoamerica's last great native civilization. Warfare. Even though the Aztecs are remembered for their human sacrifices, they had many weapons and ways of fighting. They were fairly advanced. Even though they didn't use metals such as iron and steel, instead they used clubs, bows, arrows, spears, swords, and darts for offense, and shields, body armor, and sometimes helmets for defense. Clubs and swords were studded with fragile but very sharp obsidian blades. Spears were used for jabbing and stabbing at close quarters, as they were made to be short. Atlatl were dart-throwing devices made of wood. They consisted of a meter-long stick with a hook at the end, which you fitted in the dart into. Then you drew your arm back and flung the dart. An experienced warrior could use one to direct accurate and deadly darts or javelins while remaining a safe distance away from an enemy during their first stage of battle, which was the two fighting armies lined up facing each other. Period. Art. Sculpture became very important in the Aztec culture. They made human statues to honor the gods, human figures to carry banners or hold tables, and realistic animals and plants for zoos out of stones. Sacrificial platforms like the calendar stone were made of stone too. Aztec craftsmen made small figures of humans and gods of materials from jade, colored feathers from tropical birds, gold, and silver, materials they thought would be valuable or sacred. The Aztecs also painted. They painted murals on buildings, probably depicting the gods. Aztecs also worked with clay and wood to make things like musical instruments and containers for storage of food and more. They also made jewelry out of objects like shells. Culture. Religion was a very big part of the Aztec culture. They had lots of gods. There were cultural gods, the most worshipped and powerful, nature gods, gods of creation, gods of pleasure, gods of fertility, gods of death, and gods of trade. Some of the gods were Texipula, whose name means smoking mirror, Quetzalcoatl, the god of life, wind, and the morning star, Hitsupushi, the god of the sun, and Mixcoatl, the god of sacrifices, war, and hunting. The Aztecs believed that there were three levels of the world: the earth world where humans lived, the underworld where the dead lived, and the sky where the gods lived. The underworld and the earth were both open to humans, but the sky wasn't. In their eyes, existence was a cycle between the earth and the underworld: birth, life, death, rebirth. What you did and where you went after you died depended on how you died. Men who died in battle or women who died in childbirth turned into hummingbirds and followed the sun as it made its journey every day. Normal people who die of things like old age went to Mixclan and Thicolian, the place for people who drowned. Farming. Farming was their main food source, so they needed to have a good system for it. However, they lived in a very marshy place and the traditional ways of farming wouldn't work. They had to invent new technologies and ways to farm. One of those ways is the terrace. It was used on hillsides where they couldn't farm because, well, it was a hill. It was built by laying out blocks of stone parallel to the hill to form a wall. Then they filled it with dirt to make it a flat area. They were able to farm on it. There were three types of terraces: hill slope contour terraces for steep slopes, semi-terraces, which were made out of plants, sand used for gentler slopes, and cross-channel terraces. Another new way of farming were chinmapas. They were called floating gardens. They're called floating gardens, but that's not accurate. They were actually just rectangular sections of dirt on the riverbed. To make a chinampa, the Aztecs first marked a rectangular patch next to a body of water. Then they would put layers of mud and decaying matter on the bottom, sort of like compost. After that, willow trees would be planted along the edges because of their vast root systems, which would help stabilize the chinampa. The Aztecs grew all sorts of these things on the Chinampas, like corn, beans, squash, chilies, and tomatoes. The end.